Okay, I know I get excited about a lot of upcoming shows. That's part of the job. But I can't tell you how excited I am about this new show from Apple TV+. It's called The Studio. It's a show made by Seth Rogen. It's about the struggle between art and commerce in Hollywood. The group chat has seen it. They're ready to talk about it. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. You know what? Let's just dive right in. Have a listen to this.
Being the head of Continental is the only job I've ever wanted.
Yeah, I'm honored, obviously, to be one of the people that gets to choose, which movies get made and which ones don't. That's huge. And I got into all this because, I love movies, but now I have this fear that my job is to ruin them.
Okay, that is just the trailer. That is just the trailer for The Studio. It's a new show that is coming out on Apple TV Plus tomorrow. It is a satire. You got Seth Rogen. He's one of the creators of the show, but he's a star of it. He stars as a film executive who gets promoted to studio head. And listen, there have been a lot of shows that have tried to sort of poke fun at the inner machinery of Hollywood and how TV shows and movies get made. But every review that I have seen of The Studio, every single review that I've seen of The Studio has been like, this is the best show. This is the best show to ever do it. This is among the best shows to ever take on this very particular thing. Angie Han is here. Teri Hart is here. They've seen the show. I have not seen the show, so I'm excited to hear their takes on this. Angie, Teri, welcome to the show, y'all.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Listen, Teri, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to pretend like I'm a studio executive, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to pitch me on The Studio and why I should watch the show. Go.
Okay, here's the pitch. So it is about a long-suffering number 2 at a studio played by Seth Rogen. He wants that top job, and in the first episode, he gets the top job. The person who's ousted is Patty, played by Catherine O'Hara.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay.
Two
I
Canadians.
had to put Catherine O'Hara too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into that, aren't we going to talk about that?
Yeah.
And then we also are introduced to Seth's kind of, his team, and that's Ike Barinholtz, and it's Chase Suey Wanders, and Catherine Hahn. And each episode deals with a kind of specific thing around film, like a lore kind of thing around film. There's an episode that deals with like that one shot thing, which we're seeing so much of because of adolescence.
Because of
it seems to be particular on point.
Like a single shot.
Episode.
Yeah.
A single shot. We've got an episode about Ron Howard and Final Cut, and like the final cut of a movie. And Seth Rogen, as the studio executive, is just a bumbler. Like, he just bumbles everything. But as we heard in that trailer, he does it with a huge amount of heart and a love for this. Yeah. So I feel like it highlights the ridiculousness of the movie business, but does it with a whole lot of love.
Teri, that's how I got this job. I'm a bumbler with a whole lot of heart, And they were like, that seems like good enough. Let's put that guy on the radio. Angie,
if I could put your laugh with Seth Rogen's laugh, like, have we ever seen you in a room together?
No, very distinctive laughs, but very different laughs, I would say. I don't think we occupy the same range of the sonic spectrum. Angie, something that stuck out for me in your review, that you said this show made you laugh so much that it hurts, and then also that it stressed you out more than The Pit. And the thing is, The Pit is a medical drama set in an emergency room. And so those two things don't necessarily cohere with one another. The idea of something that is so funny and yet more stressful than a show where like people are dying every episode. Tell me about the stress and the laughter of The Studio.
Yeah, no, this show really stressed me out, like to the point where I was sometimes kind of watching like this with like my hands over my face, like I was watching a horror movie or something. Yeah. And like part of it is just like the sense of humor. It's got like that kind of cringe humor, sort of like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where you're just kind of watching this person get in these increasingly awkward or horrible situations.
Oh, you don't do awkward, generally speaking. Like, awkward is
no, I love it.
Okay.
When I say it made me want to die, I mean that as a great compliment.
Okay, all right, got it.
So there's that. There's the long takes that you were talking about, which, so, while you're watching, it really just traps you in the mindset of these people who are really stressed out without kind of the escape valve that you would get from a cut. Or, I mean, it's not like Adolescence where it's all one take, but it does favor these like long takes that keep you in them longer than normal.
Yeah.
And then there's, as Terry was saying, the fact that he does sincerely really love this, like, care so much about his job. Like, that's what makes it really tragic. And that's what makes everything that happens to him even more of a gut punch. So, like, the whole time I was laughing because it's, as Terry also kind of said, like, it's very, very on point, it's, as a satire, but it is also just, yes, I spent the whole show really stressed out, especially that, the second episode, which is a really long take.
I gotta say, Terry, like what struck me about this and the quality of reviews coming out about the studio and the excitement about it is that I was surprised to see so much excitement about a show that has had that is basically dealing with a topic that is very well worn terrain, right? Like we've seen a lot of Hollywood satire stuff. We've seen movies like The Player. The Franchise is a show that came out not that long ago. I think it was like last year. Possibly could be this calendar year. Who even remembers what time is? So what do you think sets the studio apart?
I think that it's not just satire. I think there's an awful lot going on in the studio. It's kind of like a tofurkin. It's like there's something inside of something inside of something. You have the satire.
I don't hear tofurkin before 11 a.m. every day. I got to tell you that. That's
not every day. Not every day.
Yeah.
And not outside of a few months. We're outside of the calendar year of the use of tofurkin as well. But you've got a film noir episode. Like I've talked about that one shot episode. They really use all of this kind of romance, I would say, around the making of movies, and they use that woven into the story. It's very, very creative. So it plays on a lot of different a lot of different levels. You've got that first episode where they get Martin Scorsese to agree to make a movie about Kool-Aid. And I don't want to ruin how all this happens, but it is spectacular. And Scorsese's always fun to see on screen, but he's particularly fun in this. So, I don't want to say that it's a love letter to Hollywood because that sounds way more romantic than it is. This isn't that. But there is something that is infused in this about the level of knowledge that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg have about the business. And you really do feel like, even for me, who I kind of know a few things about Hollywood and how things work, or I think I do. Even for me, I love being able to lean into all of that. And you could sense, I don't tend to like that thing that you can picture them kind of rubbing their hands and saying, look at how clever we are. I don't like that. But this, in the studio, it works because I do think that they are grateful to be doing this. And that feels like it's coming across, and it's an awful lot of fun to watch.
You know what, Angie, like Terry's maybe pulling back from using the word romance, but I will use it. Like when I think of Seth Rogen, I do think he's someone who's a little bit romantic about the things that movies can do and the things that TV shows can do. And I think of this going as far back as, like he made Superbad. And so the idea of like creating a movie like that, you sort of land in a position where you say, I don't think you make a movie like this without being a little bit romantic about the genre that you're making that movie in. And I think like to scale that romance wider, there's to me something that is a little bit romantic about Seth Rogen's approach to filmmaking when he is when he's a producer. Do you see that romance kind of coming out anywhere else in the studio? Like, do you see romance popping up at all when you think about Seth Rogen's approach to the studio?
I think the whole show is about kind of the tension between that sort of romanticized, like idealized, concept he has of Hollywood and filmmaking and everything, and that a lot of us have, and then the sort of like cold, crass, often very dispiriting and mundane realities of it. Because like as we heard in the trailer early on, he's like, I love movies. I feel like now my job might be to ruin them a little bit, and that is what the whole show is about, and that's kind of what he's dealing with the entire season, because throughout the entire season, he never loses sight of the fact that he does sincerely love movies. The whole show is kind of, set up to glamorize this like sort of old Hollywood thing. It's got that aesthetic, like the characters often dress like there are scenes where if you just kind of saw still of it and you didn't notice they were holding iPhones, you might think it was like from the 1970s, even just because of the way they're dressed and things like that. Yeah. So it does romanticize this, like, kind of, it is very starry-eyed about like what filmmaking can do, what Hollywood can be, like what kind of like amazing creative creative, like bold, original stories we could tell. And then there's the fact that, you know, he's trying to do this within the confines of a job that's like, well, you have to make the Kool-Aid movie.
Well, I mean,
like, yeah.
go into that, because like the reason I brought up that idea about romance is because to me, when like the best satire is stuff that also includes a deep level of sincerity about the thing that you care about, and you wouldn't care enough to satirize something if you didn't absolutely love it, I think. So what do you think for you is like the most on point satire that comes out in the studio? Just to Angie.
I mean, like I said, I think just that tension between that. I think, for example, like the Kool-Aid movie becomes a plot throughout like an on and off plot throughout the season. And so at various points, people are pitching like, you know, which people they think would be involved in it, or like what they think the plot should be. And every time they did, I was like, yeah, this actually sounds exactly like what would happen and who would be involved if you were gonna make the Kool-Aid movie.
Yeah.
So things like that. But like to your point, you can tell that this it's not like, you know, like Teri was saying, it's not like they're just sitting there being, oh, we're so clever, but you can tell that this is really comes from a place of someone who understands this industry very, very well, who has a lot of like sincere affection for it, and who probably has also seen their own kind of, you know, big, grand, like dreamy ideas crushed by reality more than a few times.
In favor of a movie like the Kool-Aid Man movie. Like that's 100% what would have maybe happened. If folks are just joining us, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Angie Han is here. Teri Hart is here. We are talking about The Studio, which is this new Apple TV Plus show that comes out this week. Teri, you've called this the most Canadian, non-Canadian show of all time. What are you getting at there? Get into it.
Well, I mean, as a Canadian, it really is thrilling to watch this. We've got Seth Rogen in the lead. Evan Goldberg is his longtime business partner. They're behind this they direct every episode. It is dripping with Seth. And then you've got all these other Canadians, Catherine O'Hara, Sarah Polley. Devin Bostick shows up. Hello? Those who know.
Sarah Polley acting, I should say. Sarah Polley's not, you know, she's not directing here. She's on screen. You see her.
Acting in a comedy.
It's been a while.
Acting in a comedy.
Yes, 100%.
So, Sugar Beard from YTV Days shows up in the show.
What?
I mean, this is, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is dripping in the red and white. And I think it's kind of odd because Seth admits, like, he and Evan came up through the American system. These are not guys who came up in the Canadian system and understands how we make movies and television shows here versus the US. But I think that what we're really seeing here, Elamin, is the ability to satirize something that you are not a part of. There's an old philosophy that, you know, the best people to make fun of something are the people who are on the outside of it. And I think that even though Seth and Evan came up through the American system, listen, the end of the day, their production company is named after the grade school they went to together. Maybe it was their high school. And I think that kind of Americana influence in our Canadian DNA is what allows us to do something like this. So, by the way, Catherine O'Hara is once again spectacular in this.
Of course.
And yeah, for sure, more comedy from Sarah Polley. There's a great interview from our friend Rad Simon Pillay that people can listen to where she talks about how much fun she had. So it's very, very Canadian, but is not CanCon.
Teri, got about a minute left here on this. I just want to ask you if it makes a lot of sense to call this a Canadian show, because this is one of those things that end up blurring the lines. Like you said, it doesn't make sense to call it CanCon, probably because, you know, it's made by a large American streamer. And having said that, it is at its heart driven by Canadians, has a lot of Canadians in it. This is the moment where we're thinking through what's the thing that makes a thing Canadian. How do you think about this show in that conversation?
Yeah, I think we're seeing more and more of it. But it is definitely not capital C CanCon. This is a show that has a lot of Canadians in it, as you said, Elamin, and is you know, made by Canadians, but it's not owned by Canadians. And that is what makes capital C CanCon. Yes. We see that, you know, with a movie like My Old Ass. We even see it with like Sarah Polley's movie Women Talking. At the end of the day, they're owned by American companies. And CanCon is like, the reason CanCon rules exist is because of culture, because of building culture. These rules were set up in the 60s and the 70s. So are they due to be looked at again? Sure, probably. You want to know who wants to change them the most? The American streamers. They're the ones who want to change CanCon rules the most because they want access to our funds. They want access to all those things that are trying to be changed. So it's a really, really hot button issue. And I'm really passionate about it, although it might be the most boring thing I'm passionate about.
No, it's the coolest thing about you. Get out of here.
But yeah, I mean, CanCon is important. This is not CanCon. It's made by Canadians.
Yeah.
We can still like wave our flags watching it and be really proud of it. But at the end of the day, CanCon and those regulations are about building an industry that is about building culture, and we have to own something to build it.
Angie, I got 30 seconds left here because we need to take a moment to talk about national sovereignty. You can understand. But Angie, before I let you go, this is a show that is about the inside, the inside sort of system of Hollywood. Is it a show for insiders? Like, do you need to know, words that, they're going to use and say, okay, I don't know what that means. I need to look it up. Or will you actually just kind of be able to follow along if you don't know anything about how Hollywood works?
No, I think as much as we've been nerding out about how like specific to the industry it is and everything, like any concepts that you need explained, they explain within the show well enough that I think anyone would be able to pick it up. And I think really you just need to have an understanding of what it's like to have a job that's demoralizing, which I feel like most people have some experience with at some point in their lives. So I do think that, as long as you like the sense of humor, you like the people, so on, this is a show anyone can enjoy.
Well, I'm not demoralized by my job because I get to talk to the two of you. Thank you for coming on the show. This has been a delight. Thanks, y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Of course. Teri Hart is an entertainment reporter for Super Channel in Toronto, and Angie Han is a television critic for The Hollywood Reporter in Los Angeles. You can stream the studio on Apple TV Plus starting tomorrow. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, I'm going to switch gears now and talk about a book that's getting a lot of buzz. I should say, I read a lot, and I especially read a lot of memoirs, but I recognize that it's like more rare for a memoir to have a big breakthrough moment. There is a new memoir on the bestseller list. It's called The Tell by Amy Griffin, and just a heads up, this book does deal with some difficult subject matter. It is an Oprah book club pick and has had a star-studded book launch. Reese Witherspoon was there, Jenna Bush Hager as guests also. Amy Griffin is a very successful woman, very successful and well-connected businesswoman in the United States. The book is about a childhood secret, one that is really dark and painful, and so dark and painful that she hid the memories of it from herself. And the way that those memories come to light is quite remarkable. Emily Gould is a book critic, and she's here to talk about it. Emily, welcome to the show, friend.
Hey.
Nice
to see you.
Yeah, nice to have you. Listen, let's get right into it. Tell me about how we get to the secret at the heart of this book.
So Amy Griffin, as you mentioned, successful businesswoman. She is a venture capitalist and invests in a lot of women-owned businesses. As we are introduced to her in the book, she is quite a perfectionist. She runs miles and miles every day. She's raising 4 children in New York City, running this business. Wow. Everyone thinks her life is perfect. And then her husband, who's also a hedge fund manager turned very successful venture capitalist. We're talking about like very, very rich people here. Right. He tries MDMA-assisted therapy. And he goes to his wife and he says, this is life-changing. You got to try it too. And in the first session, she recovers a memory of being repeatedly raped and abused as a middle schooler by one of her teachers.
That's awful. Okay, well, tell me what happens in the aftermath of that big reveal.
It upends her life. It changes everything for her, and it's really a painful process that she goes through, and she continues to do the MDMA therapy and recover more and more painful memories. She also processes these memories with just a plain vanilla, regular, non-drug assisted therapist. And she has a lot of support from her friends and community. She also has the flexibility to, it seems like, take off as much work as she needs to process everything that she is experiencing. And she gets really, really depressed, and her life is really hard for a while. But she works through it and emerges really as a whole person who has incorporated these experiences into her sense of self, and it causes her to stop being such a perfectionist, have a more authentic relationship with her children. And she goes through a phase where she really wants justice. She wants to track the guy down, make sure he doesn't do it to anyone else, tries to find other victims, is unsuccessful, and in the end she just ends up feeling like telling her story is the way to get closure.
I guess the thing that made me really curious about this is that, like, look, I think you and I are like roughly similar generations here. We grew up with like DARE programs. We grew up sort of listening to conversations about being careful about drugs. And then like when you hear about a memoir about MDMA-assisted therapy, I think like to me, like it's a big surprise that is not only so mainstream, but mainstream enough that a memoir becomes best-selling based on that. MDMA is like commonly known as like a party drug. People refer to it oftenly as ecstasy, but also sometimes it can be used in therapeutic practices with a therapist who's trained in such practices. And then the sort of research is still emerging about what that can do for you. But does it feel surprising to you that our attitudes about drugs have changed so much that this is now a part of not only common public conversation, but a best-selling memoir?
It is surprising. And I think one of the things that we have to incorporate into this conversation is the fact that this therapy, not only is it technically illegal, I think, but it's also something that is really only available to like the 1% of the 1%. The amount of therapy and the quality of therapy that Amy Griffin was able to have access to was only possible because she's an incredibly rich person. And there are lots of people who have experienced horrific violence and abuse as children who don't have access to these same resources. And that's somewhat acknowledged in this book, but it's not something that it's not, this is her story. You can't expect it to be about what other people's hypothetical experiences would be about. But when I was reading the book, something that I was thinking about a lot is like, okay, it's great that she was able to have the support that she needed to process these experiences, but it's really not something that a lot of people have access to.
Before I let you go, I'm just kind of curious about the fact that I mentioned that this memoir is an Oprah book club. The other two titans of celebrity book club world, were there at the book launch. Reese was there, Jenna Bush Hager was there. What do you make of that? What do you make of the fact that like all of the gigantic book clubs were at this book launch, ready to sort of receive this book with open arms?
Well, Amy Griffin is an investor in Hello Sunshine, Reese's production company.
Okay.
So that answers
that makes
question.
Sense. Yep. Okay.
I don't know what her connection to Jenna Bush Hager is, but I don't know. All rich people are friends with each other, I guess. And the confluence of the 3 out of the 4 big American book clubs all supporting this book is unprecedented.
That feels like it's quite a remarkable thing, because they usually like not only are they kind of in competition with each other, they're sort of trying to set themselves apart in terms of trying to like pick a different lane and saying like, this is the kind of book that we're interested in, this is the kind of book that we're interested in. So for all of them to sort of throw their weight around, this is at least I will say surprising. Emily, last question to you. Maybe got 30 seconds here. Who do you think would enjoy the tell? Who's this book for?
Fans of memoirs of psychological revelation, I think. People who are interested in therapy and maybe interested in psychedelics. Yeah, it's a very, very competently told story. And, you know, I read it in one train ride from DC to New York. So it's not going to take up a lot of your time.
Emily, I appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you so much for your time, friend.
Anytime.
Talk to you soon. Emily Gould is a features writer at The Cut and author of the novel Perfect Tunes. The Tell by Amy Griffin is out now. That is it for the show today. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Hey, we are going to be back tomorrow, and I would love to see you then.